Hi, everyone. Welcome to the official relaunch of Donaide. We are so excited to have you joining us this morning. I'm Jennifer Ehrbacher. I'm joined right over here by my co-host, Steve Roseman. And we couldn't be more excited to have you here today. Steve is the CEO and founder of Donaide.
Morning. How are you? Thank you for having me on. I'm
Thanks.
gonna attempt to just ride your coattails on this one. So.
All right, that sounds good. Well, I'm still drinking my coffee this morning, so hopefully we can have all the energy in the world that this deserves, because this is such an exciting day. If you out there watching are not familiar with Donaide's platform, it's a tech-based, simple tool that really helps donors and volunteers and businesses connect with the nonprofits and missions they serve. And for donors and volunteers, it's awesome. I mean, as a mom, as a wife, sometimes it's tough to find organizations that you can really go out and connect to and take part in as a family. And Donaide helps serve as that single place to connect with a nonprofit and cause you care about. And for nonprofits, Donaide helps you spark and develop lasting relationships with the people who want to support an organization like yours. So it's really exciting, and we are happy to be able to relaunch the platform today.
Yeah, and I think you said the way you just stated Donaide. I think you stated better than we do, so we might need to talk on our messaging there. So yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, no, we're excited. We launched just a couple months before COVID hit, and so we wanted to focus on working with some charities, and then so now it's time to relaunch publicly. So we're excited.
Awesome. Great. Well, speaking of missions and people who care, we have some really exciting guests joining us today. Some gentlemen who have dedicated their lives to service and helping to make their communities a better place. And so we're going to kick it off and introduce you to these fantastic men right now. So first, we have Darrin Gray joining us. Now, Darrin has immersed himself in sports ministry for nearly 2 decades. Darrin is the Chief Marketing Officer of Athletes in Action. He's a professional speaker, a life coach, and he has a long-standing relationship with All Pro Dad, which is the national fatherhood program founded by a man we all know, Tony Dungy. Darrin, thanks for joining us this morning.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Oh, we're so happy you're here. So why don't you tell us, for those who might not know, a little bit about Athletes in Action?
So it's a global sports ministry, and we've got over 600 sports ministry leaders embedded all over the world that are finding ways to use the language of sport to reach out to people, to meet them where they are, to bring them mental, physical, and spiritual coaching that'll help them to become the best version of themselves. And it's a treat to do it. We talk about things like serving an audience of one. Gives us a new perspective on, hey, whether we win or whether we lose, right? We have a higher calling on this earth, and that's to be a better person, a better advocate, a better father, a better person, and ultimately perhaps to come to know the Most High God.
Yeah. So where did the impetus for Athletes in Action come from?
Yeah, almost 50 years ago, it was founded by a man named Dave Hanna under a ginormous charitable enterprise that many of your listeners will know about called Campus Crusade for Christ, now branded as Cru. There are over 15,000 ministers underneath that, and we're the athletic division of that very large ministry. And it's a joy to sort of help to guide the pathway, like how do we explore and innovate and find new ways to reach larger audiences by teaming up with guys like Roseman, right, to get after strategies like Donaide to help reach broader audiences, bring in more donors, volunteers, and really impact the community in new ways.
Yeah, well, that I certainly am familiar with Campus Crusade for Christ. I didn't know that it was. Yeah, that's exciting. So, as I mentioned when I introduced you, you also have a relationship with All Pro Dad. Can you tell us a little bit that?
Well, I do, and I'm an artifact guy, right? I met this guy right there along the way. In fact, in 2002, I was the general sales manager of a large media property here in town, and I had a very large budget, lots of employees, and a measure of influence. but I met a man who did influence differently. He did it by starting in his own family and then moving to concentric circles with men like you're going to hear about here in a couple of minutes. Marlin Jackson, who played for him and had him as a coach. And so I had the good fortune to come alongside Tony and some other leaders at an enterprise called All Pro Dad. And we built that from something very small to something that now has 1,200 chapters all over America. And what's really cool about that is the first chapter was at Cathedral High School right here in Indianapolis, Indiana. It's an amazing story. I don't have time to lift that all up today, but you can learn more at allprodad.com. And it's a joy to do the work that I do with leaders like Marlin and Tony and countless other NFL players, coaches, and alumni that have given their life to be about something more than selfish pursuits, but about community pursuits and impact and ways to just lift up great programs and strategies.
Yeah, what a noble cause that is. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. All right. Well, as you mentioned, our next guest is Marlin Jackson. So we're going to talk to him for a second. We'll be back to talk to you in a moment. So for those of you who do not know, Marlin Jackson is a former Indianapolis Colt and Super Bowl champion. He is a husband, a father, a social entrepreneur, and he is the founder of Pulse Analytics and the founder of Fight for Life Foundation. And that is what we are going to talk to Marlin about right now. So Marlin, welcome.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure to be with you.
We're so happy you're here. Can you tell us about Fight for Life Foundation?
Yeah. Our mission at the Fight for Life Foundation is to serve deserving but underserved youth through social emotional learning, helping them develop the skills necessary to be successful in life. Social emotional learning being the strategy of how you acquire and apply the skills necessary to manage emotions, to set and achieve goals, to feel and show empathy for others. And ultimately, it's about responsible decision making. And I mentioned acquire and apply. So we have a digital platform in which we partner with school systems and community organizations to implement our strategy of SEL. And through our system, we help the students acquire these skills and knowledge through surveys, through assessments, through workbooks, through a gamified strategy done in the classroom. And then on the applying side, the application, we actually measure in real time and provide data analytics around what's going on with the students' behavior so that we can have earlier intervention. As I said before, we do this by primarily partnering with school systems to do so in community-based organizations. But it's all about filling a gap that exists in underserved communities where the parents may be battling their social determinants of health, and this is affecting the students and giving them adverse childhood experiences. So that social emotional development, which should happen at home, is not happening. And we step in and we fill that gap through our partnerships with schools and community-based sites.
What motivated or inspired you to work with children?
My firsthand experience, being an underserved youth myself, growing up in poverty, having a mother that tried to deal as best she could with her own traumas in life, but wasn't successful in doing so and became addicted to drugs and alcohol, navigating that environment, having athletics, as I stated before, fill that gap for me and help me develop my social and emotional abilities, and making it through all of that. I look back and I saw, what God wanted me to do with my life on a larger scale, and that is to influence and affect others and the masses of other youth that are growing up within the same circumstances that I faced and overcame.
That's awesome. Thanks for doing that.
No, it's my pleasure and it's my purpose.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Well, thank you so much for sharing that story with us. We're going to come back and ask you some more questions, but I want to introduce our third guest today, Mathias Kiwanuka. He is joining us. We're going to pop him up here in just a second. So Mathias, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So you played 9 seasons with the New York Giants. You're a 2-time Super Bowl champ, and you are now the CEO at Wandering Wines. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Correct. So we import and distribute. We have 4 different brands that we that we sell. We are Wandering Wines, that's our parent company. We also have Lost Fine, that's more of the entry-level brands. We have Keen, which houses a sparkling and another rosé. And then we have Peaks and Valleys, which is our whole organic, sustainably farmed wines. And we are primarily 95% on premise down here in South Florida. So we go everywhere from Key Largo to Jensen Beach. We have clients, mom and pops. We have breweries. We have, Kyle G's up north, which is one of the best steakhouses in the state of Florida. And then we have, just tons of people down here in Fort Lauderdale, which is where we're based at. So we're just very happy to be able to bring our brands to the market in Florida, and we will expand.
That's awesome. And so I hear you also sit on the boards of several nonprofits. Can you tell us a little bit about those?
Yeah, I have been blessed to be able to spend a lot of my time working with nonprofits. There's a couple that I work with. The first one, which if you go on YouTube, you can look at video, it's Treat the Pain. That was the first travel that I did second travel I did with an organization, the first publicized one. And they bring palliative care to people in rural villages, and it's difficult to watch because there's so many people in the villages who could benefit from it, late stage, AIDS or cancer patients. And a lot of times they're just left to fend for themselves because people, A, don't understand that there is a type of care that can help them. And two, they just don't have access to it. So we actually went and visited in the village and got to sit with some people that were helped by it. And that was amazing. After that, I did some projects of my own. Some were successful, some were not. And I decided to help use my influence by joining up with three other charities. One is the Water Trust. The Water Trust builds sustainable water projects in Africa specifically. And when they reached out to me and I looked at their map, you literally could draw, a circle around the village that my mom grew up in, and they were working there. So it was a no-brainer for me. I could be in my mom's village and I could help bring, different, not just water, but other life resources to the village. The next one is All Star Smiles. It's a local charity down here, founded by Craig Spodak out of Delray Beach. He's a dental professional. And what we do there is we just bring pop-ups to small towns, and cities in South Florida where children need dental care, and he'll provide cleanings, and we'll have other dentists volunteer their time. And if children do need care, then we'll bring them back, and he'll operate or do whatever he needs to do with them in that way. The last one, I promise, is Smile Train. Now, this is the one that I'm very excited about. Recently, I just joined the board, so I'm getting into, diving deep into everything. We just had a conversation yesterday. Well, I'll tell you a little bit about it. It's, it was founded by Charles Wang. And, what we do is we bring a sustainable model to comprehensive care for cleft lips in underdeveloped countries. Now, it's something that in the developed world has been, pretty much eradicated. There are still some cases here in the United States that need help. So in the United States, we do help fill the gaps between what insurance deems as necessary and what they think is cosmetic, because, you understand the way that you look, the way your smile is, has a big impact on how your life goes. Outside of the U.S. is where the majority of the work is focused. And I say it's sustainable care because we don't bring doctors into a village and then leave. What we do is we go into a village, we find doctors that need to be trained, and that could take months, it could take years even. And those doctors, when Smile Train leaves, are able to sustain the care for those people in that village. So as I was saying, we just had a conversation yesterday, and I'm taking a trip to Uganda in June, and part of my goal is to go into the village that my mom grew up in and find some children who need care there. So for me, obviously a lot of things are Uganda centered, and that's why I've chosen the majority of the people that I work with. But I do enjoy helping people. So I'm appreciative of this opportunity to get to speak about it, and especially to be with you guys.
Yeah. So what was the moment like when you realized you could use sort of, your influence to make an impact and help those in need?
So, there's points in your life where you can point to and say, this was a defining moment, or this is where my life changed. And for me, it was, I think, year 4. This is my second stint, my 4th year in the NFL, my second stint on injured reserve, which anybody who knows anything about the game, that's not the place you want to be. And, I'm staring down the barrel of the end of my career. And I flew around to multiple doctors, and one by one, they all told me, your football is pretty much over for you. You need to find another thing to do with your life. And for me, as a young person, 1st round draft pick, to hear that was mind boggling for me. So I searched, and I was connected to an organization out of Charlottesville, Virginia called MCAM. And I went there, I stayed with them in their house, and I studied, and I got to understand what they did. And what they do is they go to villages, and they use a model called community engagement. So they insert themselves in a village for a period of time, and they find a business model that is sustainable once they leave, and they will help create a business with the U.S. resources that they have. They'll help create a business in that village so that those people can provide and continue to provide once they're long gone. And I thought that was, just an amazing premise, because I had done work in Uganda. I had gone to Uganda and built a well, and I realized that it drained the resources on the school. And that's not the way you go into a community. You don't go in and say, hey, I have this, you need that. What you do is you go in and you sit with people. So I took that model when I went back to Uganda, and I said, hey, what can I do? And they asked me for something very simple and specific. We want a building that can be used for multiple purposes, draw a line down the middle. It's an amphitheater on one, it's a classroom on the other. And so we did it. And I went back just this past year, and, they put the plaque up, and we realized we doubled the school's enrollment just by, a project that was half the budget of the previous one, but produced way more. So going back to how all this happened, I found myself in the back of a truck in Papua New Guinea with a hole in my shoes and just going through the village. And I thought to myself, this is what I'm meant to do. There's a part of me that is meant to travel and to help people around the world. And I wanted to continue doing that. God blessed me. The next year, I was able to go back and continue playing for a number of years after that. And during that time, I joined forces with all these different organizations. And that was the defining moment for me, sitting in the back of that truck in Papua New Guinea, realizing that, just my presence alone in a village can bring change, not from my pockets, but from things like this, from people who want to get involved and want to help.
What a cool moment. That's awesome. Thanks for sharing that story with us.
Of course.
Yeah. Now, Darrin, I do want to ask you, I want to switch over to talk a little bit more about your work. What's it like working with NFL players? I mean, how active are you and these players actually in the communities where you work?
Well, I'll riff with what just happened there. Like, I'm good friends with his teammate, Will Black, former teammate, Will Blackman, Eli Manning, other people that were on the Giants. We could riff for a long time on that. But I keep a network of several hundred NFL players, coaches, and alumni that I try to meet their needs, right? I say, if you can minister to the pros can minister to the people. Now, in a secular context, that becomes, if they can be on mission in the community. So every week I have a different mission with a different athlete in a different city. This morning I was working on one with a receiver from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for Promise Keepers in June. So I'm constantly building programs. I call it proexperiences.org. And it's just an easy way for me to connect people to pros. Sometimes that's through virtual means like this. I produced a TV show just a couple of weeks ago with Tony Dungy and Anthony Munoz and Chad Hennings, and we reached over 4 million people with an international viewing audience for a program called Super Bowl Breakfast. So that was a digital manifestation, but many of them are in-person manifestations. And we love the work that we do. It's an awful fun opportunity for me to help lift up men that have learned this principle. Extraordinary people don't just do extraordinary things. They do the ordinary things better than anyone else. And I heard Marlin talk about that. He said, we do social emotional. We don't let our past become an excuse for our future. We understand our identity. We do the things that matter in our own family first, then in concentric circles around us in our community and in our world. And that guy right there, man, he's changing the face of Indianapolis. in the most impressive ways. And they're not always heralded. They're not always in the big media, although sometimes they are. But I'm telling you, a difference is being made. And I love the work that I do. And thank you for asking me about that.
Yeah, and speaking of Marlin and Tony Dungy, Marlin, a lot of people talk about how influential Tony has been in their lives, the leadership he shows both on the field and off the field. What influence has he had on you? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Sorry about that.
That's like a saying of 2020 into 2021.
I'm sure everyone has experienced that a little bit over the last.
Totally.
But from the onset, the relationship and how we kicked off on one of the first meetings that we had, it was faith, family, football, prioritization. And me being a young Black man that came from the ghetto, that never met my father, that lacked role models growing up, and had been developed through sport, I never heard a coach prioritize that way. So for me, immediately the culture, right? And that was a lesson in the power of culture, being around Tony Dungy, where it may not necessarily be one-on-one sitting down having a conversation, but because of his philosophy and his strategies and his mindset being embedded into the culture of the Indianapolis Colts, he indirectly shaped and influenced so many minds in a broad manner. So then for me, that in turn allowed me to think about me leaning in and embracing my role as an athlete and the platform that I've been afforded. And then even strategically thinking about culture, and thinking about schools, thinking about how many students are inside of those buildings that are suffering at home, and how they go to school as a safe place, and how through culture, shaping culture within schools, you can shape mindsets on a broad scale, in a broad manner, and make a widespread impact. So that all started for me in our initial meeting with Coach Dungy, and then it just continued to, really be reinforced over the years that I was with the Indianapolis Colts underneath Tony Dungy.
Yeah, and do you still have a pretty good relationship with him, in touch with him to this day?
We're not in touch frequently, but when we see, it's one of those relationships, like any coach, former teammates, when you see one another, you just fall back into, what was when you were connected and around each other on a daily basis. Those feelings from the blood, sweat, and tears and the sacrifice of time put in together, those things never leave you. So it's just, picking right back up where we left off whenever you reconnect.
Absolutely. That's awesome. So, do you feel like it's kind of like hit you that impact he made on you has then caused you to go make an impact and be that same person that he was for you on all of these other people that you impact in your charity?
Yep. It has. I'm a very introspective type of individual. So just in always being reflective in nature, I think about those points and those interactions that influence me and touch my heart and my mind to really change and shape how I think and how I act now. And all of that, it's about your environment, what you experience in that environment, how that influences your mind and how that influences your behavior and what you do. And that leads to outcomes within our lives. And from the standpoint of social emotional learning and technology and trying to make a widespread impact, through culture and shaping culture through technology, for me, it started with athletics. But for me, Coach Dungy took it to another level where he clearly prioritized faith as a fundamental component, right? And then our family, and this is a professional football club, a multi-million-dollar organization, multi-million-dollar contract, and he's telling you, your faith is most important, then your family, and third and last is what you your occupation. It's so powerful, and that for me, that's the power of leadership. Leadership influences, and shapes people's mind to shape their behavior, which then shapes what we see in society. And for me, it's all these, points of contact and people like Coach Dungy that has really developed that within me and my faith in God, ultimately.
That's awesome. Well, Marlin, you make a great point there. And it's the reason why, we wanted to ask all three of you individuals on this session today, because we know that everybody here has been blessed, right? And the fact that, as Jennifer said, passing down the knowledge and the information, sometimes the learning lessons that we weren't able to understand early in life, that we now, as we get older, we understand. So once again, I appreciate that. Why we have you here, and then I'm going to jump over to Mathias. I get to ask some fun entertainment questions that we were getting from various followers of Donaide. So these are going to be football related typically, but so what was your favorite, as the local guy still here in Indy, and obviously Colts fans here, but what was your favorite moment of all time playing with the Colts? Do you have one?
I mean, I think if there's Colts fans, you probably can guess my favorite moment. Obviously winning the Super Bowl, but on a personal level, picking off Tom Brady, to help send my team to the Super Bowl, because it was one of those moments that's a backyard moment right there. Like when you were a little kid, when I was on 309 Quimby Street, playing with my childhood friends in the backyard, and there's a telephone pole in the middle of the field. We went through those types of scenarios. The game's on the line. You make the game-saving play to help your team get over the hump. And just the backdrop of that game, the history of the Indianapolis Colts and the New England Patriots, and how they have been our nemesis, and we couldn't get over the hump and beat those guys, and to do it in that fashion and to have it be a comeback victory, right? Being down by 17, 18 points at halftime, and a great moment there, even with Coach Dungy in that moment, like at halftime, being down, but him being so confident and having so much faith and coming into the locker room saying, "Men, we have them right where we want them. Like we're gonna do this, and that. We're gonna come back. We're gonna take the lead, and we're gonna win this game." And like when we were all filled with doubt, he had so much faith that he injected that same faith into us in that moment and went out there and won that game. So for all of those reasons, that's one of my favorite moments.
Absolutely. I know a lot of people in Indianapolis have that same feeling. So I appreciate it. Matthias, for once again, Indianapolis people, a little shout out to the East Side. Who are watching right now who don't know, I grew up with Mathias, so I remember, as Marlin was saying, some backyard stuff. So it's a lot of fun. I didn't grow as large as you did, so I had to keep my career to backyard. But no, I know a lot of people, here, friends, family, we talk about, and I got this specific question, is knowing or kind of understanding what was going through your head, because you touched on it a little bit, some struggles that you were going through in your career. And what was that like going into your first Super Bowl, knowing that you had no chance of getting on that field, and then what you did after that to make sure that second opportunity that you were ready to go?
Yeah, so I mean, I've spoken about this. It was, it's a real test of your mental strength. You are an athlete, and I was blessed, in a lot of things. A lot of things had to go right, but you also got to understand, I worked my butt off to get to that point. Nobody makes it to the NFL, nobody sustains their career in the NFL if they're not hyper focused on achieving one goal, and I was, and we all were at that point. So, being in that big game, but not being able to compete with the team, that was really, really devastating to me. And so I had to go back and I had to do a lot of soul searching, and I spent a lot of time, in my own head. And then eventually, you have that second surgery, you start walking, you start running, and the sun comes back out. Literally, like, you could see things better clearly and whatnot. So I made it my goal to make sure that every game that I played from that point on, I took it seriously. I was involved. I was, prepared. And Marlin, you said you picked off Brady. I picked off Brady in a preseason game, but you couldn't have told me we weren't going to the playoffs because of it. It's those things that you work for. So as it was during that time period, there were so many different things that happened after that I have to attribute to going through that pain, and coming out of it as a stronger, better player.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can see how that helps with the drive of your charitable work, because obviously, and everybody on this phone knows that change doesn't happen overnight. We're working really hard, and we think sometimes we're not making headway in our communities, and just knowing what our mission is. So once again, appreciate you being on. Darrin, to you, this is one question. We've talked a lot, and it goes back, Jennifer mentioned mentoring and things like that. And I've been very blessed to have you in my life over the last, 8 months or so. And, but we've never talked about a fun, entertaining mission moment. I know we got some real meaningful ones. Do you have any fun, entertaining, and meaningful moments? I mean, you're traveling to other countries with professional athletes, helping in villages.
Mm-hmm. Well, all that is true, and those have all been meaningful. But I thought of one because y'all, mentioned this. Coach Strong, went on from Louisville to Texas and on from there. Was coaching down at Louisville. I flew Tony Dungy in from Florida. I had a Tennessee Titan drive up. The neat thing about the Tennessee Titans player was that his dad had been an elite NFL player, at a very high level. I'm not going to disclose his name in the moment, but he was the dad that never was. He was the player in the worst sense of a word. He did not father well with his son. His son made it to the NFL anyway because he had he had incredible speed. An injury cut his career short. But the point is, we met up in Louisville. We went into the locker room, and in about 90 minutes, we trained up the entire Louisville football team in a mentoring strategy called Uncommon. They then went out onto the field because I invited the criminal justice system to invite incarcerated youth that got a day pass to come down on the football field at the University of Louisville. And on that day, with the help of this Titans player and Tony Dungy, myself, and a few others, we built an integrated mentoring strategy that brought social, emotional, leadership, and many other forms of training in a 6-station training. And that day was one of the best days of my life as I think about what it is that we had done. And it wasn't because Tony was there. It was because we brought a gravitas and a strategy that we could replicate to other teams, whether that's a high school team, a middle school team, a pro team. And these are the kind of things that from that, Steve, my life now has blossomed in such a way that those are the kind of redemptive and meaningful activities that I get to do all over the world, in Africa. And I'm headed to India soon, Israel coming up before long. Both of these men on this call, I'm going to invite on an all expense paid trip to Israel. Now, they don't know that yet, but they just got an invitation from me. It's going to be amazing. And I tell you what, they can come along for the journey, and then guess what they'll do with me? I'm going to land it right here. They'll invite me along on their journeys. And in that process, we go from journey to odyssey. We're on an odyssey. We're all coming together with our own new adventures to impact the community, to make a difference, and ultimately achieve God's good will for us as we go about our individual missions that work collectively to accomplish His high purposes in our life, in our community, and in our world.
Love it. That is the epitome of Donaide right there. Donaide's just a tool. It's a platform, right? But it's about bringing this moment together so great people can do great things. So thank you for sharing that. That's awesome.
Well, I was going to ask you what's next, but I think you just said what's next. That's some pretty exciting stuff there. Are there any specific events or, specific impacts you're trying to make in the year ahead?
Well, can I give a shout out to proexperiences.org, Ryan Kelly, the center from the Colts, Joe Wrights, broadcaster, former player, Gary Brackett, one of Marlin's closest teammates, They're all going to come to Top Golf on May 24th. I'm selling bays. I could use your help. I need some volunteers. But ultimately, I'm also looking for some sponsors to help make that come to pass so that we can execute a plan at the Brookside Community Center, the center of Indianapolis, where there's deep need for a project called Project Play Summer Camps. And those summer camps, we're going to take the pros down. We're going to interact with the youth. We're going to do a strategy, bringing social, emotional, behavioral learning to help make a difference in a community. And Marlin called them underserved. I'm going to call them at promise. We're going to take great, purposeful people down to communities that are at promise so that we can make a promise to help make them better, give them a hand up, not a handout, and ultimately find ways to help communities win.
What an awesome thing for this summer. Summer is such a pivotal time for kids. I love that. Awesome. Okay, Marlin, what's next for you with Fight for Life in 2021?
Right now, leading a nonprofit organization, fundraising is always at the forefront. So, just continue to establish and build relationships with granting organizations like Lilly Endowment, Nina Pulliam Foundation, CICF, all these organizations. So just preparing, for funding requests, program development, really refining how we roll out our programming with our virtual learning platform, developing some marketing assets in terms of training materials, training resources right now. Tech development. Once you have a technological platform, maintenance, enhancements, increased functionality, it's an ongoing process. It's very innovative, very new. So, continuing to get feedback from our users, continuing to be responsive to the feedback that we receive from our users and to build that into our platform, to stay nimble. And then just continuing to scale and increase, our user base, increasing the number of schools that we work with, increasing the number of community-based sites that we work with, increasing the service providers that are on our platform to receive referrals from schools and community-based sites. And then finally, in this path towards sustainability, it's never ending, but, taking something from scratch and building it up to sustainability, you get to the point where you get your funding resources, you have your programming down, you start to implement, you have customers, you gain traction, and now we're at that pivotal point of securing more funding so that we can then build the human capacity to go along with the technical infrastructure that we built as well. So all of those things, on my plate right now, what I'm focusing on with Fight for Life Foundation, along with our board of directors, excited about that group of people that we have there as well. But just continued development and executing on our mission of serving deserving but underserved youth through SEL and combating their adverse childhood experiences.
Yeah, that's an exciting year ahead. There's a lot on the horizon there. Matthias, what about you? You've got a lot going on. Is there a specific community focus for 2021?
Yeah, I do. Like you said, I do have a lot going on, but that's kind of the way that I operate, and I appreciate it. On the business front, Wandering Wine specifically today, we're reaching out to Capital Grill. We're trying to get into Capital Grill outside of the state of Florida. So if you guys eat there, go ahead and ask your waiter where Wandering Wines is on the list. I will be taking you up on that invitation to Israel, and I'll extend an invitation to Uganda in June with the Smile Train. So Smile Train is going to come along. We're in the process right now of figuring it out, but we are going to film it and publicize it and do all those things. So I'm going to take you up and I'll invite you stars. We'll talk about those expenses later because I got to take that to the board, but we'll see. And then as far as donations for here, I think the one that could be helped out the most is All Star Smiles. You see it's right there in the middle, allstarsmiles.org. For Smile Train and Water Trust, obviously we would love to receive donations, but All Star Smiles is a small local charity, so any little bit that you give there is going to make a bigger impact.
That's good to know. Thanks for explaining that. Well, we are so grateful for all three of you joining us today, and the impact you're making is so inspiring. I honestly cannot think of a better way to have started this day than than hearing about what you're doing. And I hope everybody out there is equally as inspired to go out and have a great day. So thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. You know that everybody can be found. Just go to app at donaide.com. You'll see all these organizations there. Their websites were also, on the website. Feel free to reach out, and we'll get you in contact with any of the organizations that we're on today, and so we can help more in the community. And thank you again for being a great example and showing others how to help those in need.
Yeah.
Thank you for the opportunity to share our platform and our journey.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well,
hey, everybody.
Before we sign off, I just want to give a quick plug for 1 o'clock this afternoon. Join us back here. We're going to have 3 more awesome guests who are making a big impact in the community. David Sexauer, Amber Fields, and Natasha Robinson. So we will be here at 1 o'clock, and we hope you all will too.
All right. Sounds good. Thank you.
All right.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.